Okay, hi, we're back. This is the second video in the three-part writing series that I have posted on my website. Now, I've got to go over and do my cheat sheet again. So now we are at video 2 on character. This is one of my favorite subjects because without a really well-developed character, your readers are not going to really buy into what you're trying to sell them. Anyway, it's another short video and on character. And as with any human being, we take years and years to become the people we are. However old you are, whether that's a 10-year-old or whether that's a 15-year-old or whether that's a 65-year-old, we take up to however many years to become the person that we are at that very moment and whatever problems that we face in that very moment. So we've all experienced at some level, whether 10 or 65, some physical growth, some psychological growth, spiritual growth, economic growth, and if we're like most people, we've also experienced deterioration in these same areas. So think about that. Of course, we don't want to spend decades writing a character. We don't want to spend decades to try and develop a fictional character. So we will speak in terms of how a character might develop in your mind and in of course, a faster, more efficient way. Again, I'm using Muscle Up the Gut of Your Story, How to Write the Novel. Specifically, I'm using a character chart, and I have to flip out of here. It's in an Adobe file, but I'm using a character chart that outlines what items you might like to think about developing for your character. I like to try and get to all of them so that I can really understand my characters well. And it's not that you get it all out on the paper into your story actually, but you understand your character and your character's motivations and what that character might do in any given situation. And then also, I want to throw out a little plug to Jerry Jenkins. He has a fabulous writing course called Your Novel Blueprint. And he goes about talking about developing a story and ultimately, of course, writing it. And then you go even to the end of editing it and then marketing it. So it's a really wonderful course, and it does take a few months to get through. It's a great tool, and I highly recommend it. Again, it's called Your Novel Blueprint. He suggests you use a visual character, and you see that character. You can pick your character out of your head. You can usually see a character when they start messing around in your brain. But this character, he suggests that you see the character in your mind's eye getting off a bus, and you ask certain questions about who she is, where she's coming from, where she's going, and as well as other triggers to get you, the writer, to know her a little bit better. Again, a great tool. Highly recommend it. It's a great class if you can afford it. It's approximately $2,000. If you can't, however, afford it, you can always choose my little $10 workbook. It goes through the steps of formatting and all the parts of writing the novel. And again, that's the Muscle Up the Gut of Your Story, How to Write the Novel. Now, I'm going to go over to my Adobe file here. Let's see, there it is. And this is one of the later chapters where I have outlined for the person who purchases this workbook, the writer, how to what items you can fill in through your a simple character chart. It's very simple, but it goes through the name and possibly even the reason of or meaning of the character's name, any nicknames, and why there are nicknames, things about this person's physical appearance, favorites of this character that you're developing, your character's habits, the background information. We'll get back into that a little bit more. Your character's family, your character's attitude. Now, you can have, of course, character attitudes can change, but this talks about overarching attitude of your character. Of course, you can start the character off with a really bad attitude at the beginning and maybe feels much better about life in the end, who knows, but this is a general idea about the character, your character's personality traits, and then, you know, flaws and that sort of thing. Your character's perception of self and her relationships with others, her goals, her problems and crises, and then there's more general information, and then you can, and then there's an uncategorized area which talks to what does your character secretly admire, who does your character secretly admire, character was most influenced by, things like that. And you fill all these questions in. This is a great character chart. Let me get down to that again. And so we often think of character in the physical terms. And of course, that's easy to put in age or eye color, skin tone, or does she look healthy, or is she sickly? And I have to plug a great book that I just read called The Gretchen Question by Jessica Treadway, where we typically think of our character as somebody that's very, that's a healthy person. This is a healthy person. She may be thin, she may be overweight, who knows? I don't know, but she's healthy in general. This character was not, and how she describes her is very interesting as it proceeds through the storytelling of The Gretchen Question, a fabulous book, a must-read. Highly recommend that book. Favorites goes to like favorite color, favorite food, literature, expressions, expletives, music, that sort of thing. Habits, does she smoke, drink, when and how much, any hobbies. Background goes to type of childhood, where did she come from, what was her hometown, what's her first memory. Things like this are very important because it really does, this background is one of my favorite parts of developing character, because I like to think about that first memory. I mean, if anybody's ever done any kind of grief counseling, you go to those first memories. And they're very interesting to think about, because you can say, this is my very first memory, but then, a while will go by and then, oops, you know what? I think this was my first memory. So there is several things that children remember, or, you remember as a child happening. And that background is religion, practicing, why or why not. Education and financial status, things like that. And then family members, mother, who is the mother, what's her relationship with her mother. And I'm going through this really quickly because it's an extensive character chart. Father, relationship with father, siblings, how many, relationship with each, children of siblings, and attitude. Okay, most at ease when. We talked a little bit that she might have several attitudes. It might change from 1 minute to the next, and from the beginning to the end. But attitudes to this. When is she most at ease? When is she most ill at ease? What are her priorities, her philosophies? How she feel about herself? What past failures would she be embarrassed to have people know? If granted one wish, what would it be? Things like that. Personality. Greatest source of strength and personality. So you talk about that. Greatest source of weakness in this character's personality. The character's soft spot. Is this obvious to others? If not, why? What's your character's biggest vulnerability? What are some traits? Is she an optimist or a pessimist, an introvert or an extrovert? What are her drives and motivations, her talents, her good characteristics, her character flaws, mannerisms, peculiarities? Peculiarities. Oh my goodness, I can't even say that today. I don't know why. Biggest regret, minor regrets. Biggest accomplishment, minor accomplishments. Character's darkest secret, who, if anyone, knows about it. How did this person discover it? Okay, so that's very interesting, and that leads right into a story, I would think. She's got this big dark secret, and if nobody knows about it, well then, it'll just be outed maybe, possibly, maybe during the, probably during the telling of the story. But what if one person knew about it? What would that person be? Would that person be a friend or a foe? And I'm not saying it one or the other, because it could be both, right? Okay, the perception of self. What is your character's perception of herself? One word character would use to describe herself. Complete the description of how the character describes herself. What does the character consider best, is her best physical characteristics? What is her worst physical characteristics? Are these realistic assessments? And if not, why? How does the character think others perceive her? What would character change about herself, and why? If that change occurred, would the character be as happy as she thinks she would, and why or why not? In a relationship with others. Okay, so this is another major category. So in a relationship with others, how does the character relate with others? This is a really good question, because I'm more of an introvert. I handle myself fine. If I'm asked to speak about writing, I can do just fine. And given a small group of people, friends, I'm fine around those people. But it exhausts me, so I prefer to be alone. And so those are the types of things that I know about myself. And so how does the character relate with others? That's a really good way to explain how a character might relate to other people. She's fine for a while, but it's exhausting. Does she have a lot of friends? How is she perceived by strangers and by friends? Does she have a wife or husband or lover, or all three of the above? Is she the hero or heroine? Characters' first impressions of the hero, or what are the first impressions of the hero, heroine, and why? What happens to change this person's perception? What do friends and family like most about the character? What do friends and family like least about the character? See where it goes? And now these are goals, the goals of the character. And I know I'm throwing this at you fast. Immediate goals. This is very important, especially when we're dealing with developing the story and the goals of the story. What are the immediate goals of this character? What are her long-range goals? And how does she plan to see these goals accomplished? And what are the problems? How does she react in a crisis? How does she face problems? What kind of problems does the character usually have? How does character deal with a new problem? How does character react to change? I used to have a girlfriend, and she's still my girlfriend, but she would have all sorts of interrelationship types of problems. And it was just interesting to watch. It happened all the time. It seemed like every single day there was a new crisis in her life, which was really sad. Okay, so this is more general questions. What are her favorite clothes, least favorite, why? Does she wear jewelries? What kind of jewelry if she wears it? Does she drive? If she doesn't, why not? Place she wants to live, why? Spending habits, is she frugal? Is she a spendthrift? And why? What does she do too much of? What does she do too little of? Most prized possession, and why? Okay, so this is an uncategorized area. Like I said before, who does she secretly admire, and why? Person character is was most influenced by. Who is the most important person in this character's life before the book starts? And why? And how does the character spend the week before the book starts? This is a great question. So this gives you an idea of what is, what the parts of building character are, it's a lot. You have to know your character inside and out. So there you have it. It's a bunch of information on how to build a fictional human being. And after you do build your human, you can then start writing about her and what her problem is. We'll talk about that, the problems and conflicts, in the final video session. And until then, bye-bye.